Welcome back to Letters of Intent. I'm Pankaj Raval.
And I'm Sahil Chaudry, corporate attorney here at Carbon Law Group.
This is a show where we break down the legal and business issues that matter to founders, operators, and growing companies.
Today, we're diving into the new frontier of identity theft. And Pankaj, we're going to need your expertise here. Pankaj, as you all may know, is Mr. IP. And today we're going to be talking about AI voice cloning and how deal makers can protect their most personal assets before the first byte of data is ever recorded. We're starting off with a huge warning. Your voice could be stolen while you sleep, and right now, the law is not fast enough to stop it.
So if you don't secure your vocal IP today, you may lose the rights to own your sound forever. Scary, right? Dun, dun, dun. So if you're a founder who does public speaking, a creator, or whose business kind of depends on your voice, or just a business owner trying to protect your brand's digital footprint, you need to listen closely. The legal landscape is shifting right beneath our feet.
Pankaj, I don't know how many more shifts I can take here. Recent rumors are we're going to find out that there are aliens. We're dealing with a lot of massive change all at once, so we're going to need some help getting grounded here. So let's ground this in what's happening right now.
I agree, man. All this change happening, man. All this shit's happening today. This makes me want to take a nap.
Yeah,
There's so much
seriously.
going on in the world. We got wars. We got AI. Threatening our
Yeah.
jobs, our voices. Now, what won't it take? I'll just tell you anecdotally. Like you and I both kind of spend a little time on social media, looking at it, studying it, getting news from it, as many people do. And the amount of AI slop and digital slop that you're seeing today is next level. Like, I'm at a point
Yeah.
where, like, why do I even watch this anymore? Like, 90%, like, and half my time is thinking, is this AI? Is this
Yeah,
AI? Is this
totally.
AI? So
That's
it's
so
just,
true. I mean,
it's
I actually think that if today we found out that aliens had landed on Earth, people would just kind of scroll past it. Like, I think
right.
this is, there was a time where that would be big news. But today we're dealing with the war, we're dealing with AI, we're dealing with a transforming economy,
Uh,
we're dealing with major, major changes. And it seems like aliens are going to be the least of our concerns.
exactly. I mean, I'm ready to say, like, yeah, just take me away, man. Just let's go. Let's go. Yeah.
Okay,
Not
let's
bad.
get into this to make sure
Let's
we
get to
know
it.
how our voices don't get stolen from us.
Let's do it.
Hey, this is the property that you need to protect now. So this is an interesting situation. Taylor Swift. So over the last week, Taylor Swift made headlines not for a new album, but for a major legal maneuver. She filed 3 trademark applications specifically targeting her voice and image.
Yeah, you're right, Sahil. And she's trying to trademark the audio of her voice. She's trying to trademark essentially her saying, "Hey, it's Taylor Swift," and "Hey, it's Taylor," along with very specific image of her on stage during the Eras tour. And there's a reason behind this. Taylor Swift is one of the biggest stars in the world right now. She filled stadiums. She's got millions and millions of followers. This makes a lot of sense for these kind of stars where their voice could be hijacked essentially and taken over by unsavory characters leveraging their star power.
It's so interesting that she went the trademark route because usually when we think about singers, we're thinking about copyright, we're thinking about songs and lyrics, but we're talking about trademark because artists are now facing this massive wave of unauthorized AI deepfakes. Is exactly what you alluded to. You're looking online and you're scrolling past something, you have no idea if that's that person or not, and the traditional legal shields just aren't cutting it.
Exactly. This is the big issue right now. And this is the challenge of AI, and especially a challenge of AI in an unregulated world, right? Like, there's huge pushback about regulating AI because people worry that, oh, China, Russia, other people are going to be able to get ahead of us. But it's going to create real negative externalities, real problems that we're seeing, and we're going to be seeing even more of. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg. With regard to Taylor Swift, historically singers relied on copyright law to protect their recorded music, but with AI allows the user to generate entirely new content and mimic a voice without actually copying an existing recording. So it actually mimics them, but does it violate copyright? I mean, it definitely could. You think there are claims for copyright infringement as well, but it definitely goes to brand, goes to the source identifier, and that's what trademark law is all about. We saw Matthew McConaughey do something similar in January when he trademarked his catchphrase, "All right, all right, all right," to establish a perimeter around his identity. So this is going to be coming up more and more with, especially stars and celebrities, because their fame is their brand, right? And their brand is their fame. So it's critical that they protect that. And in a world of AI, when it's so easy to copy something or someone or someone's voice, the lines are going to get blurrier and blurrier.
All right, all right, all right. The world is changing. And if you want to learn more about that, we actually recorded an episode about Matthew McConaughey speaking with Timothy Chalamet about trademarking his voice. So spend a little more time with us on Letters of Intent.
Yes.
Celebrities are using trademark law to plug the holes left by copyright and right of publicity laws. What's fascinating to me is that we're watching a new branch of law emerge right in front of our eyes, and that's related to AI. When AI was unleashed on us, it entered this environment that didn't have the rules and regulations that were ready to deal with it. It was dealing with the internet. It's dealing with, when you think about communications law, the cable laws weren't ready to deal with the internet, and the laws related to the internet aren't really ready to deal with AI yet.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing about the law, man. Like, as you and I know, and I think, being business owners and operators for so many years, you realize, what, the law is very slow to catch up. And technology is moving so fast. It's going to take years for the law to catch up and for these bad actors to really be held accountable. So it's kind of the Wild West right now with what's going on in AI and how it's going to be affecting businesses, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and the likes, because unfortunately, just the law cannot keep up with what's happening, especially in a global environment and the internet, where people in Pakistan or people in the Philippines could be doing this, and what's your recourse against them? It's going to be a lot harder to catch these bad actors, which is why we need smart, consistent regulation now.
Exactly. So that's the big shift we want to talk about today. As a deal firm, we want to identify new asset classes that you should be negotiating. When it comes time to make a deal for something like your voice, this is a new asset class and you need to be able to trademark it. And there are new applications. When trademark laws were written, they did not anticipate that you would be able to have a deep fake AI voice of someone else. And so now, until the law catches up, contracts need to play that role. So I want to get into
Absolutely.
some mechanics. What is the very first thing that needs to change in a modern contract that addresses AI?
So, getting into mechanics here, I think you've got to look at the rights that are being conferred, right? Like, if you're doing deals in 2026, especially with these bigger companies, AI, you have to look out for language related to AI and the use of your name, image, likeness, and voice, even, right? Like, you need to be aware of what are the rights you're giving up in these contracts. You have to look at
Training models.
training models. You have to look at words like neural training, neural network, LLM, any kind of IP related authorized use, any language around IP, you've got to be really keyed into, because now more than ever, a lot of these companies are going to be expanding their claimed use and rights of the work that they're contracting.
Exactly. We see this a lot when it comes to entertainers or actors, and the contract says that they have the right to use that person's name, image, likeness, and voice for future training models. And essentially, that means you're giving your name, image, likeness, and your voice in perpetuity to a company. Oftentimes, the company is asking for that. And we need to limit the use of your name, image, likeness, your voice as much as possible. There need to be time limits. There need to be geography limits. When you're looking at an agreement and it's using you as the product, just keep in mind that you need to keep some limit on the application of your identity.
Absolutely, Sal. In the past, if you signed a standard media release or a work for hire agreement, the company owned the recording or the production. Today, however, the companies are using that broad, outdated language to justify scraping your audio to train their AI models. You have to think about all this data out there exists, and now it's being mined to train these models. So think about how much footage there is out there that these models are training on.
I could imagine I'm just scrolling on Instagram and I find an image of me promoting a brand I don't like or using my voice to sell some kind of product I don't like. And also, there are certain situations you might not want to see your image in. Eventually, we're going to see AI actors that are coming out. If you're able to essentially take what's a hologram of someone and place it in circumstances that the person didn't originally intend, that's a totally different intent than what was originally behind the work made for hire concept. In work made for hire, you can ring fence. Okay, we created this together. Let's say a photo shoot, for example, or a film. You know the situation you were in. You know the other people who were around you. You know the clothes you were wearing. You know the lines you had to say. But now, if a company could take my image in my voice and place it in a completely new circumstance, there is an unlimited and unchecked right to use my personal brand for a purpose I didn't anticipate. And that's something that we will fight for. And that's something that you have to fight for. As someone who's negotiating those kinds of rights, you need to know that you have a right to fight for your image.
Absolutely. So, and that brings us to the next massive issue here is the term of the agreement. A lot of these agreements will, if you're not careful, ask for the rights in perpetuity. And that you really needs to be addressed and modified if you're seeing that in agreements, because if it says in perpetuity, now you're giving up your rights forever. And that's not a good thing because the world is changing fast. And why shouldn't you be able to capitalize on your name, likeness, or other whatever it might be in the future? And essentially, you could be giving up that right if that agreement says in perpetuity.
In perpetuity is those are very scary words in the era of the digital age. If you give up rights forever, you have no leverage when the technology evolves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So really, we need term limits. We need to specify usage and types of usage and ways you can use the content. And when it comes to voiceovers, when we're talking about a voice, if you record a voiceover for a marketing campaign, the contract must state that the audio is only for that specific campaign. Also in California, there are laws coming out around the country, but in California, there are specific laws regarding that if they're going to use that information for AI, or if they're going to use that content in AI, or it has to be explicitly stated in the contract. So just be aware of that. If you did something and then you see it's being used in AI, you should let them know that, hey, you didn't give this authorization, and there's requirement specific contract language that's required for them to be able to do that.
So you want to make sure that your drafting language explicitly excludes the right to use any of your recordings for machine learning, data scraping, or synthetic voice generation. You have to carve it out or it's included. But Pankaj, what happens if a company does want to license a synthetic replica of your voice? How should we structure that?
So, Sahil, you need to structure a separate deal for that. You need to establish residuals for replicas. You should also be getting paid for every single time your synthetic voice is deployed, and not just for the hours you spent in the recording booth.
Okay, so let's talk about structure and the ways that founders and prominent creators can insulate this asset. We need to talk about the right of publicity, which I know, Pankaj, you engage with a lot in many of the deals you do.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. The right of publicity is really, really important. It kind of crosses over with a lot of trademark issues, copyright issues. If you're doing deals, you really you're in the content space, you're the marketing, entertainment, you need to really consider how you're going to protect your right of publicity, and that means your name, image, likeness, and maybe even transfer them into a dedicated LLC or trust or company, corporation, a professional services corporation, whatever it might be, to protect it and to ensure you can leverage it in the future.
I actually love that idea. I mean, if you transfer your name, image, likeness rights into an LLC, you become the business. Now, whatever
Right.
income you earn on that, you would be able to expense any deductible expenses against that. Plus, you have limitation of liability. Let's say you get sued. So there are some benefits I could see to placing those rights or right of publicity into a corporate container or a company container. If a breach occurs and someone clones your voice, having those rights housed in a corporate entity can make enforcement and calculated damages much more straightforward. And then that's the entity that's signing the contract on your behalf. And you're going to have expenses. You're going to have to pay lawyers to negotiate those kinds of deals. So that'll keep your books clean. It'll keep your licenses clean. And eventually, if that asset becomes very, very valuable, you could raise capital in it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so I want to pivot to the tech itself. Even if your contract drafting is flawless, you still have to record the audio somewhere.
Absolutely. And this is where due diligence comes in. Or your lawyer or whoever advisor needs a terms of service audit on the recording software and hosting platform you use because, who knows? We're using Riverside, and we got to make sure that Riverside is not allowing Anthropic or OpenAI to train on this data. And unless you review those terms of service and privacy policy, they very well could.
Right. Pankaj, we're looking at the fine print. We're looking at data processing agreements. We're looking at how the tools we use are using and controlling our data. So we're talking about data sovereignty.
Absolutely. Yeah. Data sovereignty is exactly what we're looking at. We need to know exactly where your raw audio data is being stored, who has access to it, and critically, who has the right to delete it. If the platform's default terms say that they can use your user generated content to improve their services, which is code for AI training, you have some concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. Then that means your voice is locked away forever with whatever tool you're using. So okay, let's wrap this up with some immediate actionable advice for our audience. If you're a founder or small business owner listening right now, we want you to ensure that you're auditing your current contracts. If you don't have an AI exclusion clause, it's time to prepare to renegotiate. And step 2 is you need to check the terms of service on the platforms where your media is hosted. So, number 1, when you're doing a deal, you need to narrow the scope and the time that you are permitting a third party from using your right of publicity, your voice, your any kind of image related rights. And second, you might be silently giving those rights away if you haven't audited the licenses of the tools you're using. So we don't want you to wait for Congress to pass a law because that's going to take forever. They're dealing with aliens right now. So you have to build your own protective moat. And you do that with contract drafting.
Contract drafting and yeah, being proactive. Exactly. Your voice is your asset, especially in entertainment. If you're one of the 50 million people that have a podcast today, you've got to make sure that your voice is being protected and recognize that there is a likelihood that there's going to be data leakage out there. So if you want to be proactive, if you're concerned about this, you should probably be sending out letters. Maybe saying, "Hey, I use this and I don't want my information being sold, being stored." And then that creates a affirmative obligation on these platforms to protect your data and your voice. You may not be able to use those platforms if that's their terms, but at least if you're very concerned about this and how your voice is being used, I would be proactive and take steps to notify these platforms that you don't want it used this way. So because then the onus is on them to ensure they comply or you terminate your agreement. But recognize these are all contract terms that can be negotiated sometimes, and other times you just got to be aware that maybe that's not a service you want to use if they're going to be using your assets in such a way.
That's right. Well, to our audience, thank you so much for listening to this episode. That's absolutely right. That's all for today's episode of Letters of Intent. If you're out there in the audience, do not record my voice and include it on any of your memes that you're putting out on social media because you need to get my license first. I'm looking to make some money off this voice.
Exactly. He's worked hard to cultivate this. This didn't happen overnight, ladies and
This
gentlemen.
did not happen
This
overnight.
took many years, 30 some odd years. We won't say how many, but we'll say it took a while to get this. So he's not giving it up that easy. And you'll definitely be hearing more from us about
You'll be
this in the
hearing from my
future.
lawyer.
And until next time, everyone, we hope you continue to make big deals, swing for the fences. And if you're looking for a legal partner, Carbon Law Group is here to support you along the way. Best luck with building and growing. Thank you again for listening to Letters of Intent. Like, follow, share for more. And we always love to hear from our listeners to see ways we could actually improve the podcast or answer any specific questions you have.